My daughter told me I wasn't good enough for her wedding. The wedding I paid for with 40 years of sweat and sawdust. She looked me in the eye and said, "Go away." So I did, and I took every single dollar back with me. They thought they could humiliate me. They were about to learn what happens when you tear down the foundation. If you're listening to this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. It helps more than you know. They say a man's hands tell his story. Mine are rough, calloused. They've shaped wood and poured cement for 4 decades. They built the house my daughter grew up in, the roof over her head, and apparently they built the lavish wedding I wasn't invited to. I stood outside the Oakmont Country Club. The air smelled like old money and expensive roses. I adjusted the tie on the only suit I owned. It felt tight, like a rope around my neck. My wife Susan stood beside me. Her hand trembled in mine. We were there for our daughter, but we weren't welcome. And then I saw her. Chloe, my little girl. She looked like a princess in a magazine. White lace, sparkling diamonds. She was smiling for a photographer, a big, bright, fake smile. Then her eyes met mine. The smile shattered. She hurried over. Her heels clicked sharply on the stone path. Her voice was a tight, strained whisper. "Dad, what are you doing here?" I tried to keep my voice steady. "It's your wedding day, sweetheart. Your mother and I came to see you." "Dad, Batsa, it's your wedding day, sweetheart. Your mother and I came to see you." Her eyes darted around, nervous, afraid someone might see us together, ashamed. Her fiancé, Tyler, appeared behind her, like a shadow. His face was a mask of polite annoyance. Tyler was the kind of man who wore sweaters tied around his neck and used words like aesthetic. He always adjusted his cuffs when he felt superior. He adjusted them now. "David," Tyler said, his voice smooth as oil. "We discussed this. The guest list is very curated." He paused, letting the insult hang in the air. "Your presence is complicating the atmosphere." Complicating the atmosphere. I was the father of the bride. Chloe looked at me. Her eyes were pleading, but they were also cold. Colder than I'd ever seen them. "Dad, I'm sorry. You weren't invited." She took a breath, steeling herself. "Please, just go away." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Invited. I paid for every rose in that place, every crystal glass, every drop of champagne. I looked at the daughter I raised, the girl who used to wear a plastic hard hat on my construction sites. I saw a stranger. I didn't argue. I didn't cause a scene. I just nodded. I took Susan's hand. It was ice cold. We quietly left. We walked back to my truck. The silence was heavy. I sat behind the wheel. Numbness spread through my chest. I looked at my hands, hands that had spent a lifetime building things. They felt useless now. 2 hours later, while they were eating filet mignon and making toasts, I made a few phone calls. Every single payment for that wedding was canceled. The credit cards declined, the checks bounced, the vendors panicked. No me, no wedding. But the trouble didn't start at the country club doors. It started 6 months earlier. It started the moment Chloe announced she was marrying Tyler. Tyler worked in marketing. As far as I could tell, that meant he talked a lot and produced very little. I was a builder. I built things you could touch, things that lasted. Tyler built illusions. We were sitting on the back deck. I had rebuilt it just last summer. The air smelled like cedar and barbecue smoke. Susan was beaming. Chloe held out her hand. The diamond was huge, so big it looked obnoxious. "We have a vision, Dad," Chloe said. She already sounded like Tyler. "We want the wedding at the Oakmont Country Club. It has to be perfect, elegant." I knew Oakmont. I renovated their clubhouse a few years back. It was expensive, very expensive. "We talked about a budget, Chloe," I said slowly. "Your mother and I set aside $40,000. That's a lot of money. We can make a beautiful wedding with that." 40,000 was nearly everything we had saved. Tyler leaned forward. He hadn't touched the burger I'd grilled. He flashed his perfect white teeth. "David," he started, his tone condescending. 40,000 is a good start, but Oakmont's baseline package is 50. And that's before flowers, the dress, the music." He paused, letting the numbers sink in. "Chloe deserves the best. We can't compromise on the vision." "Vision doesn't pay the bills, Tyler," I said. My voice was even, but my jaw was tight. I rubbed my temples. The stress was already building. 40,000 is what we have." Chloe's lips started to tremble. The same look she used when she was 5 and wanted a new toy. "But Dad," she whispered. Everyone in Tyler's family is expecting Oakmont. The Harrisons are very influential people. She leaned closer. What will they think of us if we cheap out? That was the first crack. The first time I realized my daughter was more worried about what Tyler's polished, wealthy family thought than about the reality of her own. Susan put a hand on my arm. A silent plea. Keep the peace. Susan always wanted peace, even when peace cost too much. She twisted her wedding ring nervously. We'll make it work, I sighed. The weight settled onto my shoulders, heavy like a load of bricks. We'll find a way. The silence that followed was cold. I realized then that the life I had built was suddenly not good enough. And this was just the beginning. Finding a way meant sacrifice. It always did. But this time, it felt different. It didn't feel like an investment in her future. It felt like I was paying just to be allowed in her life. I took on extra jobs, small renovations, bathroom remodels,
patching roofs in the pouring rain.
I worked weekends, long days that stretched into cold nights. My back screamed. My knees ached. 40 years of kneeling on hard concrete was catching up to me. I started keeping a bottle of pain pills in my glove compartment, something I swore I'd never do. I delayed upgrading my equipment. My old table saw started to stutter. It slowed down my main projects. My foreman, Mike, noticed. He always noticed everything. Boss, we need that new saw, Mike said one afternoon, kicking the sputtering machine. This thing is costing us time, and time is money. Not right now, Mike, I said, rubbing my temples again. The headache was constant now. The money's tied up. Mike looked at me. He knew about the wedding. He knew I was struggling. You look tired, Dave, he said quietly. You're burning the candle at both ends. It's not worth it if it kills you. I brushed him off. I'm fine, Mike. Just get the framing done. But I wasn't fine, and the pressure was mounting. Susan started working part-time at the local bakery. She came home, smelling like yeast and sugar. Her feet were swollen from standing all day. She'd fall asleep in her chair after dinner. Exhausted, we were draining ourselves. Physically, financially, we stopped going out. We ate cheap meals. We turned the thermostat down until the house is cold. But the demands kept coming, and the cracks kept spreading. A month later, Chloe came over with a wedding planner named Julian. Julian looked at my house like it was a teardown. He sniffed the air, wrinkling his nose, as if the smell of my life offended him. We're going with the platinum linen package, Chloe announced. She spread fabric swatches across my dining table. They all looked white to me. It's an extra $5,000, Julian added, looking bored. $5,000 for napkins. Chloe, we're already way over budget, I reminded her. The invoices from the lumber yard were spread out next to the swatches. We agreed on the standard package. The standard package is scratchy, Dad, she said, wrinkling her nose. Just like Julian. She flipped her hair back nervously. A new habit. And we need the imported orchids. Not those cheap roses, Julian suggested. Julian nodded stiffly. Roses are so basic. So pedestrian. Pedestrian. That was a new word for them. A Tyler word. I looked at my hands. I remembered planting the rose bushes in our front yard when Chloe was 5. She used to pick them for her mother every Sunday. Roses were beautiful. Now they were pedestrian. Fine, I said quietly. I'll move some funds. I didn't tell Susan the truth. I took out a small loan against the business. The interest rate was brutal. The payment started immediately. I felt the walls closing in. But what choice did I have? I thought that would be the end of the major expenses. I was wrong. Then came the invitations. Thick, creamy cardstock. Gold leaf edges. They must have cost a fortune. Tyler stopped by my workshop on a Saturday morning. I was trying to catch up on the paperwork I had neglected. The smell of sawdust hung heavy in the air. Tyler stood in the doorway. He looked around the shop with faint disgust. He brushed imaginary dust off his expensive jacket. He always did that, like my work was dirty. Just reviewing the guest list, David, Tyler said. He held up a tablet. Never paper. Always a tablet. We need to finalize the numbers for the caterer. Okay, I said. I wiped grease from my hands with the rag. We had to make some cuts, he explained smoothly. His voice dripped with condescension. Space is limited. We want the right mix of people. I knew where this was going. The tension in the workshop thickened. He swiped the screen. We couldn't invite your friends from the construction crew. Mike, Joe, and the others. My jaw tightened. I stopped wiping my hands. I looked at him, really looked at him. Mike and Joe. These were men who had known Chloe since she was born. Men who helped me build her treehouse. Men who supported us when I nearly lost the business during the recession. They're my friends, Tyler, I said, my voice low and dangerous. They're like family, and we respect that, Tyler said. He didn't mean a word of it, but this is a sophisticated event. A very high-profile networking opportunity for me. A networking opportunity. My daughter's wedding. He looked me straight in the eye. No shame. No hesitation. We need to maintain the atmosphere. We can't have them drinking beer from the bottle and talking about drywall. I stared at him. The silence stretched between us. He didn't flinch. He truly believed what he was saying. I was the builder. He was the elite. And never the two shall meet. I didn't argue. I just went back to sharpening my tools. The grinding sound of the metal filled the workshop. It drowned out the insult. But the wound was there, deep and festering. A few days later, I ran into Mike at the lumber yard. He was loading up supplies for the job I should have been supervising. Dave, Mike said, leaning against his truck. He looked uncomfortable. Listen, I heard something about this Tyler kid. His marketing firm, T-Brand Solutions. I stopped loading the cedar planks. What about it? Word on the street is he's sinking fast, Mike whispered, looking around. Borrowing money from some shady people. Missing deadlines. My cousin works for a supplier, he stiffed. He looked me straight in the eye. Just watch your back, okay? And watch your wallet. T-Brand Solutions. A cold dread washed over me. Was I funding more than just a wedding? The possibility made me sick. The final blow before the wedding came disguised as a gift. Chloe and Tyler wanted a specific designer dress and tuxedo. $15,000 combined. I told them it was impossible. The budget wasn't just stretched. It was broken. We were now pushing $80,000. Double the original budget. I was maxed out. The loans were suffocating me. A week later, Chloe showed up at the house, bursting with excitement. Tyler's parents bought the dress and the tux, she exclaimed. She showed us pictures on her phone. The Harrisons said they wanted to ensure we looked the part. They understand the importance of image. Susan was thrilled, relieved that the financial pressure was eased slightly. I felt a cold knot in my stomach. It wasn't a gift. It was a statement. They were showing me I couldn't provide for my daughter. They were replacing me, asserting their dominance. Their superiority. I was the contractor who couldn't afford the designer label, and they wanted to make sure everyone knew it. The rehearsal dinner was held at an expensive restaurant downtown, the kind with valet parking and menus with no prices. The air inside was sterile. The laughter was too loud. The conversations felt forced. We arrived on time. The hostess looked at our names, frowned, and led us through the main dining room, past the large tables, filled with Tyler's wealthy family and friends. We met the Harrisons briefly. Tyler's father, Robert Harrison, shook my hand weakly. His wife, Eleanor, barely acknowledged us. She looked at Susan's dress like it was a dirty rag. The hostess took us to a small table in the back, near the kitchen doors, separated from the main party, like the help. It was intentional, a calculated insult. The humiliation burned in my chest. Susan kept twisting her wedding ring.
Faster and faster.
It's just a seating arrangement, David, she whispered, trying to convince herself. I knew better. The betrayal became undeniable during the speeches. Robert Harrison stood up, a bank executive, a man who carried his wealth like a weapon. He cleared his throat loudly, demanding attention. He talked about legacy, about success, about the merging of two great families. He listed Tyler's accomplishments, his prestigious education, his promising career at T-Brand Solutions. He never mentioned us. He never acknowledged our presence. It was as if Chloe had appeared out of thin air, a product of their world, not ours. I sat there, The expensive food tasted like ash in my mouth. I watched Chloe and Tyler mingle with the crowd, laughing, sipping champagne. The champagne I paid for. They never once looked our way. We were invisible. After the speeches, Chloe finally approached our table. Her smile was bright, brittle. "Mom, Dad," she began. "We need to talk about tomorrow." "What is it, sweetheart?" Susan asked. Her eyes filled with a desperate hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, she still mattered. "It's about the ceremony." Chloe took a deep breath. She avoided my eyes, flipped her hair back nervously. Tyler and I were thinking it might be more appropriate if Robert, Mr. Harrison, walked me down the aisle. I felt the blood drain from my face. It was a physical blow, a knife to the heart. Walking her down the aisle, that was the one thing I had held on to. The one moment that was supposed to be ours. The one moment that made all the sacrifices worthwhile. My ears rang. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. "His father?" I repeated. My voice was hollow. "Chloe, that's my role. I've dreamed of that since the day you were born. I know, Dad, but Robert is a bank executive." Her voice was cold, rehearsed. It looks better for the optics. For the connections we're trying to build. Optics. Connections." My daughter had become a transaction. Then she delivered the killing blow. "And frankly, Dad," she said, looking me straight in the eye for the first time that evening, "you don't exactly fit the aesthetic we're going for." She gestured vaguely at my suit, my hands, my life. "This is an elegant, high-class wedding. You're a contractor. Sometimes you just don't blend in." The betrayal was complete. We weren't parents. We were the embarrassing secret they were trying to hide. The basic contractor who didn't blend in. That silence cut deeper than any word. The cruelty wasn't just from Chloe. Tyler seemed to enjoy highlighting the gap between my world and his. Later that evening, I was standing near the bar, waiting for a drink. Tyler and his groomsmen approached. They were loud, already half drunk on the premium liquor I was funding. "Look at this place," Tyler boasted, gesturing around the room. "This is how life should be lived." He looked at me, his eyes swept over my suit. It suddenly felt cheap. "Ill-fitting. You know, David," Tyler said, adjusting his cuffs. "You should consider retiring. Let the younger generation take over. All that heavy lifting can't be good for you." "I like working," I said stiffly. "Working?" he laughed. A harsh, grating sound. "Pushing dirt around isn't exactly high finance, is it? But hey," he slapped me on the back. "Harder than necessary. Someone has to build the stages we perform on." His friends chuckled. Tyler smiled, pleased with his wit. To him, I was just a simple laborer, a fool with a checkbook. The indifference in his eyes was colder than any insult. It was calculated cruelty, designed to put me in my place. And it worked. I felt small, insignificant, broken. The ride home was silent. The air in the truck felt heavy, suffocating. When we got home, I didn't go inside. I went straight to my workshop. The smell of sawdust usually calmed me. The scent of honest work, of turning raw materials into something beautiful and lasting. But that night, it felt like the smell of failure. I looked around the workshop. My kingdom, filled with tools worn smooth by years of use. Youth prints for houses I had built. Lives I had shaped, and yet none of it was good enough. For her, the weight of the past 6 months crashed down on me. The demands, the insults, the loans, the exhaustion, the realization that my daughter was ashamed of me. I felt a profound weariness. I couldn't do this anymore. A small faded sticker caught my eye. An old toolbox in the corner. A cartoon beaver holding a hammer. Chloe had stuck it there years ago, when she insisted on being my assistant. A memory flashed, sharp and painful. Chloe, 8 years old, wearing oversized safety goggles, proudly holding the nails as I built her treehouse. "We're the best builders in the world, Daddy," she had shouted, her voice innocent, full of love. The memory wasn't comforting. It was fuel. The exhaustion evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. I wasn't just an embarrassment. I was the man who had built her world, And it was time she remembered that. I stood up, dusted the sawdust off my jeans. The shift was subtle but profound. I wasn't a hurt father anymore. I was a contractor realizing the terms of the agreement had been violated. I walked back into the house. Susan was sitting at the kitchen table, staring blankly at the wall. "We need to talk," I said. My voice sounded strange. Stronger. I sat down and pulled out the folder containing all the wedding invoices. I started digging. If this story is keeping you hooked, drop a like. It tells me I'm not alone in this. It was late, but I started making calls. I had to find the truth. Mike's warning echoed in my ears. "Watch your wallet." I called the florist first. A woman named Sarah answered. She sounded tired, stressed. "Hi, Sarah, this is David Peterson. Chloe's father," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "I'm reconciling the invoices. Can you confirm the final cost for the imported orchids?" There was a pause. I heard the rapid tapping of a pen on a desk. "Orchids?" Sarah sounded confused. "Mr. Peterson, the final payment was processed last week, but the bulk of the order was roses. We only used a few orchids for the bridal bouquet. Roses. Chloe told me roses were basic. She charged me $10,000 for imported orchids. And she lied. The rage started to build. A cold fire in my gut. I called the caterer, the photographer. The same story. The costs Chloe and Tyler had quoted me were inflated. Significantly. They were skimming off the top. But that wasn't the worst part. I called the Oakmont Country Club. I asked for the event manager. I explained I needed an itemized bill, emailed to me immediately. I told him it was urgent, a matter of accounting discrepancy. When the email arrived, I opened it. My hands trembled. Not with sadness, with pure, unadulterated rage. "What is it, David?" Susan asked, her voice hesitant. I pointed to the screen. The total for the evening was $75,000. 75, Susan repeated, confused. But Chloe told us it was closer to 95. "Where is the other 20,000? I scrolled down the invoice, and there it was. A separate line item, listed as a deposit, paid directly to a business account I didn't recognize. T-Brand Solutions, T-Brand Solutions, I whispered. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Mike was right. I searched the name online. It was Tyler's marketing firm. A failing marketing firm. Reviews mentioned missed deadlines. Unhappy clients, lawsuits pending. The articles confirmed everything Mike had heard. The hidden truth was uglier than I imagined. They weren't just inflating the costs. They were laundering money through the wedding. They were using my sacrifices, my sweat, my blood, not just to fund their lavish party, but to finance Tyler's failing business, to keep his illusion alive. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. They didn't just see me as an embarrassment. They saw me as a fool, a walking ATM, a mark. I looked at Susan. The color drained from her face. "They lied to us," she whispered, horrified. "Our own daughter. They stole from us. They didn't just steal, Susan. They manipulated us. They humiliated us. They humiliated us, and they thought we were too stupid to notice." For the first time in months, Susan's eyes hardened. The peacemaker was gone, replaced by a mother's fury. "What are we going to do, David?" I looked at the blueprints spread out on my desk. Building required a plan. So did demolition. "We are going to stick to the original agreement," I said. My voice calm, measured. "We promise to pay for the wedding, and we will. But not a penny for Tyler's branding services, and only if the terms are met." "What terms?" Susan asked. "Respect," I said. The day of the wedding arrived. I got dressed slowly. I put on my suit, the one that apparently didn't fit the aesthetic. I looked in the mirror. I saw a tired, middle-aged contractor. But I also saw a man who knew the value of his work. Susan and I drove to the Oakmont Country Club. The parking lot was filled with luxury cars. Mercedes, BMWs, Audis. I parked my truck at the far end of the lot. We walked toward the grand entrance. The sound of violins drifted out into the afternoon air. It was time. A young man in a tuxedo, holding a clipboard, stopped us. Names, please, he asked, polite but firm. David and Susan Peterson, parents of the bride. He scanned the list. Frowning, he looked up confused.
I don't see your names here, he said. Are you sure you have the right wedding? There must be a mistake, Susan said, her voice tight. But I knew there was no mistake. They had actually done it. They had erased us from the guest list. The audacity. Just then, Chloe appeared, breathtaking, radiant, like a princess. But when she saw us, her smile vanished, replaced by panic. "Mum? Dad? What are you doing here?" she hissed. She pulled us aside, away from the entrance where the Harrisons were greeting guests, hiding us. "Again, we came to our daughter's wedding," I said, my voice low but firm. "But you weren't invited," she whispered. Her eyes darted nervously. "We discussed this. We agreed I would come visit you tomorrow. You can't be here today. It's too important." "We didn't agree to anything, Chloe," I corrected her. "You made demands, and we complied. Until now." Tyler walked over, his face like thunder. The mask of politeness was gone. "What's the problem?" He glared at me. "David, Susan, you shouldn't be here. You're going to ruin the atmosphere. Get out. The atmosphere seems fine." I said, my voice dangerously calm. "We just want to see our daughter get married." I was giving her one last chance to choose us, to choose the truth. "Dad, please," Chloe begged. Tears welled up in her eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of frustration. "This is humiliating," she cried. "The Harrisons are right there. They're watching." She grabbed my arm. "Please, just go away." The betrayal was complete. She chose image over family. She chose Tyler's world over the one I built for her. "I'm sorry," she said. Her voice held no real remorse. "You weren't invited. Go away." I looked at her, really looked at her. One last time, I saw the little girl who loved the smell of sawdust, and I saw the woman who despised it. "All right, Chloe," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "We'll go." I took Susan's hand, and we walked away. I could feel the eyes of the guests on us, the whispers starting. We got back in my truck and drove off the property. I didn't look back. The demolition had begun. We drove to a small diner a few miles away, the kind of place with sticky menus and strong coffee. My kind of place. We ordered coffee and pie. Susan was crying softly. I just felt numb. "She really did it," Susan whispered, stirring her coffee. She turned us away, her own parents. I checked my watch. The ceremony would be over now. Robert Harrison would have walked her down the aisle. The reception would be starting. The champagne would be flowing. The illusion would be complete. I pulled out my phone. It was time to drop the wrecking ball. I called my bank first. I asked for the fraud department. "This is David Peterson," I told the representative. "I need to cancel all pending checks associated with the Peterson wedding account, and I have reason to believe I am the victim of significant fraud." I provided the check numbers, the florist, the band, the caterer. "Fraud, Mr. Peterson?" the agent asked, his voice sharp. "Yes," I said. "I have evidence that funds were illegally diverted to a business account. T-Brand Solutions, $20,000. Plus inflated vendor costs." The agent was silent for a moment. "We'll freeze the account and investigate immediately, Mr. Peterson. The checks are canceled." Next, I called the credit card company, the large deposit for the Oakmont Country Club. The remaining balance was due to process at the end of the evening, paid on my platinum card. "I need to withdraw authorization for the final payment to the Oakmont venue," I said. "Reason for the withdrawal, sir?" the agent asked. "Services not rendered," I said. "I was denied access to the event I paid for. Breach of contract and suspected fraudulent charges related to the event." I hung up the phone. It was done. The foundation I had built was collapsing. Right on top of them. 2 hours later, my phone rang. It was Chloe. I let it ring 3 times before answering. "Dad!" She was hysterical, screaming. Chaos echoed in the background. Shouting. Music cutting out abruptly. The sound of a disaster unfolding. "What did you do?"
I did exactly what you asked, Chloe. I went away, I said. My voice calm. I sipped my coffee. The venue manager just interrupted the speeches. She shrieked. He said the payment for the hall was declined. The caterer's packing up the food. The band stopped playing. I heard shouting in the background. Angry voices. They're saying the checks are canceled. Sarah, the florist, is here demanding payment. Chloe sobbed. Is that so? I said. I took a bite of my pie. It was apple. My favorite, the sweet taste of revenge. Tyler grabbed the phone. His voice was a snarl. The veneer of sophistication was gone. You petty, vindictive old man, he shouted. You ruined everything. We have 300 guests here. My investors are here. This is a disaster. My father is furious. You should have thought about that before you denied entry to the hosts, I said. We'll sue you. I'll destroy you, Tyler threatened. For what? For canceling payments for a service I was barred from. Good luck with that. I paused. By the way, Tyler, how's Ted Brand Solutions going? I hear you needed that $20,000 deposit. Silence on the other end. Dead silence. You knew, Tyler whispered. The arrogance gone, replaced by raw fear. I know everything. I said, I know you inflated the costs. I know about the roses. I know you stole from me. I know you used my daughter to finance your failing business. I leaned back in the booth. You overplayed your hand, Tyler. You built on a foundation of sand, and I hear the bank is investigating your accounts for fraud. Tyler gasped, the choked sound of panic. Chloe took the phone back, her voice trembling, desperate. Dad, please, fix this. We're humiliated. The Harrisons are furious. Eleanor is causing a scene. They're threatening to leave. They'll get over it, I said. You wanted a wedding that reflected your values, Chloe, and you got one. It was a beautiful illusion, built on a foundation of lies and greed, and like any poorly built structure, it collapsed. What am I supposed to do now? She cried. The sound of her world shattering echoed through the phone. I suggest you and Tyler figure it out, I said. You're adults. Start acting like it. You wanted to project success? Here's your chance. I hung up the phone. The diner was quiet, just the hum of the refrigerators and the clinking of cutlery. I looked at Susan. A small smile touched her lips. We finished our pie. The fallout was spectacular. The wedding ended abruptly. Guests left, shocked and whispering. The Harrisons realized they were now on the hook for the remaining costs, if they wanted save face. They were furious at Tyler for his manipulative scheme. For the humiliation, they refused to pay. They washed their hands of him. The vendors threatened lawsuits against Chloe and Tyler. Their perfect image was shattered. The story spread quickly through their social circles. They weren't the sophisticated power couple they pretended to be. They were exposed as greedy, entitled, and fraudulent. Tyler's business collapsed completely. The fraud investigation uncovered more irregularities. Tyler was facing serious legal trouble. He left Chloe a week later. Once the money was gone, his undying love evaporated. He blamed Chloe for the disaster. The illusion was over. A few weeks later, Chloe showed up at the house. She looked tired, broken. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by jeans and a sweater. The massive diamond ring was missing from her finger. Can we talk? She asked quietly, standing in the doorway. We sat on the back deck. The air was crisp. The smell of autumn leaves, the cedar wood, felt solid beneath my hands. I messed up, Dad, she said, staring at her hands. I got so caught up in Tyler's world, in the image, the status. I forgot who I was. I forgot what mattered. Why, Chloe? Why did you treat us like that? Why did you lie about the flowers? Why did you steal from us? I asked. The pain was still raw, the wound still open. I was embarrassed, she admitted. Tears rolled down her cheeks. The Harrisons always made comments about your job, about our house. They made me feel small. I wanted to prove I was good enough for them. I thought if the wedding was perfect, if I fit into their world, they would accept me, she whispered. And did they? She shook her head. A bitter laugh escaped her lips. When the money disappeared, so did they. They blamed me for the humiliation. They won't even return my calls. I looked at my daughter. The entitlement was gone, replaced by a painful humility. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry for what I said, for turning you away, for everything. I sighed. The anger I had felt was gone, leaving only a profound sadness. I know you are, Chloe, but you broke something. Something fundamental. Can it be fixed? She asked, her voice small, vulnerable. I thought about my work, restoring old houses. Sometimes the damage was too severe. The foundation was rotten. You had to tear it down and start over. I don't know, I said honestly. It will take time and effort. You need to rebuild the trust you destroyed, and you need to pay back the money you stole. She nodded, wiping her tears. I will, I promise. I'll get a job. I'll make it right. It wasn't a perfect ending. It was messy, painful, and real. But it was a start. A year passed. The Oakmont scandal faded. Chloe got a job. A real job. As a teacher's assistant, she was slowly paying back the money. We saw each other for coffee occasionally. The conversations were stilted at first. Cautious, but slowly, tentatively, we were finding our way back. One Saturday afternoon, I was in my workshop, working on a custom cabinet. The familiar smell of sawdust filled the air. I heard the door open and turned around. It was Chloe. She looked around the workshop, the place she had once despised. Smells good in here, she said softly. I nodded, surprised. She walked over to the workbench, picked up a piece of sanded wood. She ran her hand over the smooth surface, the texture feeling familiar beneath her fingers. Can you teach me? She asked, looking up at me. Her eyes clear and focused for the first time in a long time. Teach you what? How to build something, she said. Something real, something that lasts. A small smile touched my lips. I looked at my hands, rough and calloused, hands that could demolish, but also hands that could rebuild. All right, I said. I picked up a measuring tape and handed it to her. Let's start with the basics. The foundation is everything. I showed her how to measure, how to cut, how to join the wood. She was clumsy at first, hesitant, but she was focused, determined. As we worked side by side, the silence was comfortable, filled only with the sound of the saw and the hammer. It wasn't the glamorous life she had craved, but it was honest. It was real, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. We were builders, and we were finally starting to rebuild the foundation that had been broken. Thanks for listening. Please rate our story in the comments. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe. Your support means a lot because your time matters.